Good day everyone, I'm Julius M. Napiza, your discussant for today. I will be discussing Alexander and the Hellenistic Era. Under the leadership of Alexander the Great, Macedonians and Greeks united to invade, conquer the Persian Empire. In the conquered lands, Greeks and non-Greeks form a new society in what is known as the Hellenistic Era. So under Alexander the Great, Macedonians and Greeks conquered the Persian Empire. Next. So, the contents of my report, number 1, Macedonian invade Greece. Under that is Alexander the Great. Second is the Hellenistic Era. Under the Hellenistic Era, we will discuss about the Hellenistic kingdoms, Hellenistic arts and literature, science and philosophy. Next, let's move forward to Macedonian invade Greece. The Greeks viewed their northern neighbors, the Macedonians, as barbarians. They were rural people of farmers and agricultural laborers, organized into groups, not in city-states like the Greeks. Although they spoke a dialect of Greek, they had not been involved in the rivalries of Greek city-states. Their leaders focused mostly on defending their northern borders. By the end of the 5th century BC, however, Macedonia emerged as a powerful kingdom. So let's move forward to Philip and Alexander. So in 359 BC, Philip II came to the throne. He built a powerful army and turned Macedonia into the chief power of the Greek world. Philip was soon drawn into Greek affairs. So a Greek admirer of Greek culture, he longed to unite all of Greece under Macedonia. Fearing Philip, the Athenians allied with a number of other Greek states and fought the Macedonians at the Battle of Chaeronea near Thebes in 338 BC. The Macedonian army crushed the Greeks. So Philip quickly gained control of all Greece, bringing an end the freedom of Greek city-states. He insisted that Greek states form league and then cooperate with him in a war against Persia. Before Philip could undertake his invasion of Asia, however, he was assassinated, leaving the task to his son Alexander. So Alexander the Great was only 20 when he became king of Macedonia, and Philip had carefully prepared his son for kingship. By taking Alexander along with him on military campaigns, Philip taught Alexander basic of military leadership. After his father's death, Alexander moved quickly to fulfill his father's dream, the invasion of the Persian Empire. So he was motivated by the desire for glory and empire, also by the desire to avenge the Persian burning of Athens in 480 BC. Now, let's move on naman in Alexander's conquest. Alexander led important campaigns and expanded his empire from Greece to Persia, Babylon, Egypt, and beyond, taking advantage of local political context as he conquered new territory. Perhaps the greatest effect of his empire was the spread of Greek culture through the successor empires that long outlasted Alexander's rule. Next, Alexander was taking a chance in attacking the Persian Empire. So although weakened, it was still a strong state in the spring of 334 BC, when Alexander entered Asia Minor with an army of some 37,000 of men, both Macedonians and Greeks. The cavalry, which would play an important role as a striking force, numbered about 5,000. So by the next year, Alexander had freed the Ionian Greek cities of Western Asia Minor from the Persians and defeated a large Persian army at Issus. He then turned south. So next, in this part, I make a timeline of Alexander's conquest. So by the winter of 332 BC, Alexander had Syria, Palestine, and Egypt under his control. He built Alexandria as the Greek capital of Egypt. It became and remains total one of the most important cities in both Egypt and the Mediterranean world. It was also the first of a series of cities named after him. Next, in 331 BC, Alexander turned east and fought the decisive battle with the Persians at Gaugamela, not far from Babylon. So, after this victory, Alexander took possession of the rest of the Persian Empire. Over the next 3 years, Alexander moved as far as modern Pakistan. In 326 BC, Alexander reached India, where the campaigning was hard. When his soldiers refused to go farther, he agreed to go home. He led his troops across the deserts of today's southern Iran. Many were dying of heat and thirst. At one point, some soldier found a little water and offered it to him. According to an ancient Greek writer, Alexander poured it on the ground, so extraordinary was the effect of this action that the water wasted by Alexander was as good as a drink for every man in the army. So Alexander returned to Babylon, planning more conquests, but in 323 BC, exhausted from wounds, fever, and too much alcohol, he died. He was 32 years old. Now, let's move to Hellenistic Era. So, the Hellenistic period covers the period of Mediterranean history between the death of Alexander the Great in 323 BC and the emergence of Roman Empire, as signified by the Battle of Actium in 31 BC and the conquest of Ptolemaic Egypt from the following year. Next, Alexander created a new age, the Hellenistic Era. The word Hellenistic comes from the Greek word meaning to imitate. So, it is an appropriate way to describe an age that saw the expansion of Greek language and ideas to non-Greek world of Southwest Asia and beyond. Next. So, Hellenistic kingdoms. So, after Alexander the Great invasion of the Achaemenid Empire in 330 BC and its disintegration shortly after, the Hellenistic kingdoms were established throughout Southwest Asia: Seleucid Empire, Kingdom of Pergamon; Northeast Asia, Ptolemaic Kingdom; and South Asia, Greco-Bactrian Kingdom, Indo-Greek Kingdom. The United Empire that Alexander created by his conquest fell apart soon after his death as the most important Macedonian generals engaged in a struggle for power, and by 300 BC, any hope of unity was dead. Next, eventually four Hellenistic kingdoms emerged as the successors to Alexander. First, Macedonia, Syria in the east, the Kingdom of Pergamum in Western Asia, and Egypt. All were eventually conquered by the Romans. The Hellenistic monarchs who succeeded him, however, relied on the Greeks and Macedonians to form the newly ruling class. Even those from eastern regions who did advance to important government posts had learned Greek, for all government business was transacted in Greek. The Greek ruling class was determined to maintain its position. Next, Alexandria, which Alexander had founded in Egypt, was the largest in Mediterranean region by the 1st century BC. Hellenistic rules encouraged a spread of Greek colonies to Southwest Asia. Greeks and Macedonians provide not only new recruits for the army but also a pool of civilian administrators and workers. Architects, engineers, dramatists, and actors were all in demand in the new Greek cities. The Greek cities of the Hellenistic era spread Greek culture to Southwest and Central Asia, as far, in fact, as modern Afghanistan and India. Next. Let's go on the Hellenistic arts and literature. During this period, sculpture became more naturalistic and also impressive. There's an interest in depicting extreme emotions on top of anatomical realism. The Hellenistic artist seeks to represent the character of his subject, including themes such as suffering, sleep, or old age. The Hellenistic era was a period of considerable cultural accomplishments in many areas, especially science and philosophy. These achievements occurred throughout the Hellenistic world. Centers, however, especially the great Hellenistic city of Alexandria stood out. Next. Alexandria became home to poets, writers, philosophers, and scientists, scholars of all kinds. The library in Alexandria became the largest in ancient times with more than 500,000 scrolls. So the library encouraged the careful study of literature and language. There was also a museum that welcomed scholarly research. Pergamum, the most important city in Asia Minor, also became a leading cultural center. So as a result, Pergamum also attracted both scholars and artists. The library and Pergamum was second only to Alexandria's library. Next. So this was Pergamum looks like, also referred to by its modern Greek form Pergamos, which was a rich and powerful ancient Greek city in Mysia. Next. The founding of new cities and rebuilding of old ones presented opportunities for Greek architects and sculptors. So Hellenistic kings were very willing to expend their money to beautify the cities within their states. The buildings characteristic of Greek homeland, baths, theaters, and temples lined the streets of these cities. So both Hellenistic kings and rich citizens patronized sculptors. So thousands of statues were erected in towns and cities all over the Hellenistic world. So Hellenistic sculptors maintained the technical skills of the classical period, but they move away from the idealism of earlier classicism to a more emotional and realistic art. This is especially evident in the numerous statues of old women and little children. Next, Apollonius of Rhodes. So, Apollonius of Rhodes told the story of Jason and the Golden Fleece around 3rd century BC. In the epic poem Argonautica, Jason is a hero who must complete impossible tasks to take his place in society. In this particular task, Jason must capture the golden fleece, which is guarded by a serpent in a garden, so that he can become a king. Next, let's tackle the science and philosophy in Hellenistic period. Science and philosophy. The Hellenistic age witnessed considerable advances in the sciences. Astronomy and mathematics were two areas of progress. The intensification of royal patronage and new usage of public funding were why science developed so much in Hellenistic Alexandria. The Ptolemies quickly realized that scientific discoveries and innovations made in Egypt would in turn bring glory and popularity to King himself. Next. Aristarchus of Samos, was a famous Greek mathematician and astronomer, popular for his theories regarding the heliocentrism of our solar system. So he developed the theory that the sun is the center of the universe while the earth rotates around the sun in a circular orbit. So the prevailing view, in contrast, held that earth was a center of the universe. The new theory was not widely accepted at the time. Next, Eratosthenes of Cyrene. He was a man of learning, becoming the chief librarian in the Library of Alexandria. Eratosthenes invented a system of longitude and latitude and made a map of the known world. And he was another important astronomer. He determined that Earth was round and calculated Earth's circumstances at 24,675 miles, and estimated that was within 185 miles, 298 kilometer of actual figure. The mathematician Euclid, who wrote The Elements, a textbook on plane geometry, this work has been used up to modern times. Next, Archimedes of Syracuse. So the most famous mathematician and inventor in ancient Greece, Archimedes, is especially important for his discovery of relation between the surface and volume of a sphere and its circumambling cylinder. And he worked on the geometry of spheres and cylinders and also established the value of mathematical constant pi. A practical inventor too, he was have devised the Archimedes screw, a machine used to pump water out of mines and to lift irrigation water. And also, Archimedes' achievements inspired a number of stories. Supposedly, he discovered specific gravity by observing the water he displaced in his bath. He then became so excited by his realization that he jumped out of the water and ran home naked, shouting, "Eureka! I have found it!" He is said to have emphasized the importance of levers by proclaiming to the king of Syracuse, "Give me a lever and a place to stand on, and I will move the earth." The king encouraged Archimedes to lower his sides and build defensive weapons instead. And Athens remained the chief and center of philosophy in the Hellenistic era, attracting famous thinkers from all over who established schools there. The development of two new systems of thought, Epicureanism and Stoicism, strengthened Athens' reputation as a philosophical center. Next, Epicurus. Epicurus was an ancient Greek philosopher and sage who founded Epicureanism, a highly influential school of philosophy. He was born on Greek island of Samos to Athenian parents, and the founder of Epicureanism began a school in Athens at the end of the 4th century BC. He believed that human beings were free to follow their own self-interest and make happiness their goal. The means to happiness was pursuit to pleasure, the only true good. So Epicurus did not speak of the pursuit of pleasure in a physical sense, which is what our word Epicurean was come to mean. Instead, pleasure was freedom from emotional turmoil and worry. To achieve this, people had to free themselves from public activity. However, they were not to give up all social life. To Epicurus, all life could only be complete when it was centered on the ideal of friendship. Next is Stoicism. Another school of thought was Stoicism. It became the most popular philosophy of the Hellenistic world and later flourished in the Roman Empire as well. Stoicism was the product of a teacher named Zeno. Zeno was a Syrian who came to Athens as a merchant. Zeno lost his possessions on the sea voyage. A philosopher in Athens consoled Zeno by teaching him that material possessions were not necessary in order to be happy. After learning from other philosophers in Athens, Zeno began to teach in a building known as the Painted Portico, the Sto Poikile, hence the word Stoicism. Like Epicureans, Stoics wanted to find happiness, but they thought it could be found only by living in harmony with the will of God. Then they could bear whatever life offered. Hence, our word Stoic. Unlike Epicureans, Stoics did not want to separate themselves from the world. Public service was regarded as noble. The real Stoic was a good citizen. Next, I also add Alexander's legacy because it is also important part. So Alexander created an enormous legacy, extended Greek and Macedonian rule over vast area, which brought large quantities of gold and silver into their economies. So Alexander's successors tried to imitate him using force and claims of divine rule to create military monarchies. Although mainland Greeks remained committed to the ideals of city-state, the creation of monarchies became part of Alexander's political legacy. So Alexander also left a cultural legacy due to his conquest. Greek language, architecture, literature, and art spread throughout Southwest Asia, Central Asia, and parts of North Africa. The Greek also absorbed aspects of Eastern culture. So that's all. Thank you for listening. God bless you all. Thank you.